Muted.
Experience is going to look like from both the employee and employer perspective. And then, of course, some of the differentiators with task approach and how we do things differently. So this is just our confidentiality agreement. It's kind of one of those things that has to be there. Essentially, it just says, please don't share any of these materials outside of this presentation. They are for your personal use only. So a little background on myself. My name is Elliot Rivera. I'm the Regional Sales Director of South Florida representing TASK. TASK is actually an acronym for Total Administrative Services Corporation. I've got about 15 years of industry experience. I've worked as a broker, account executive, as well as now on the carrier side of things. So I have a unique perspective in this view of things. And then finally, I'm appointed by the Florida Department of Insurance as an instructor for continuing education on these and other topics with respect to the benefits industry. So again, we're going to be introducing you to TASK for those of you that are unfamiliar with us as a company. And we're going to go over FSAs in general, high-level overview, and then going to talk a little bit about tax benefits of that approach, and then what we're going to do with respect to account management and customer service, and then of course we're going to answer that very important question that if you do elect to move forward with an FSA, why would you choose TASK? A little background on TASK itself. We are a national third-party administrator of employee benefits. We are actually the largest privately held third-party administrator in the United States. We've been in business 40-plus years now. We serve all size markets. We have employer groups as small as one up to many, many thousands, as you can imagine. We are based out of Madison, Wisconsin. That is our home base of operations. We now have over, actually, I know the slide says 900, but we have now over 1,200 employees nationwide, primarily, again, based out of that Madison, Wisconsin office, but we have 60-plus regional offices as well, so we can support you pretty much in whatever time zone you're in. Our corporate philosophy and our mission statement, to sum this up, is just to basically to provide a high level of service to the client through financial advisor channels. One of the advantages of being privately held and taking this direction from an executive standpoint is we can actually act on your recommendations and feedback. I'll show you a little bit later on how exactly we did that, specifically with respect to our FSAs. We recently revamped that platform, reinvesting some of those dollars back into our FSAs so that we could improve both the employer and employee experience. And the changes that we made were directly related to feedback that we got from our clients. So I think that's a really good vision and mission from a corporate perspective. I did mention some of those other service offerings that TASK does offer. As you can imagine, we do all of the medical spending accounts like your FSAs, HSAs, HRAs. We also do continuation benefit services like COBRA, FMLA, retiree billing, and then all areas of compliance as well, from ERISA, ACA employer reporting, all the way to HIPAA compliance. So I did mention we do have a national presence, over 40 years of experience. We do have a track record of strong customer service. We are very innovative with respect to our service offerings. We do practice service transparency and accountability specifically, and I'll touch base on this a little bit later on with respect to our My Service Center, which is available via our online platform. We do have multiple distribution and service channels, primarily working through financial advisors and brokers. And then, of course, with respect to our FSAs and HRAs, we do support you with an exclusive audit guarantee. So, you know, we're not just administering the program for you, but we're guaranteeing our work on the back end. So FSAs in general, let's talk about those. FSAs are administered under a Section 125 of the Internal Revenue Service Code, and it's basically a pre-tax benefit for employees that you deem eligible. It's also a tax advantage for employers. There's multiple different accounts internally underneath a Section 125 that employees can put monies into. Primarily, that's going to be in a healthcare FSA. Those types of expenses are everything that you would imagine underneath medical, dental, and vision. Essentially, when an employee is coming out of pocket for co-payment, prescription co-payment, co-insurance, deductible, any of those expenses are typically eligible for an FSA. If it's a gray area, think cosmetic surgery or teeth whitening, some of those things, those would not be eligible for an FSA. So it's primarily going to be medical necessity when an employee is coming out of pocket. Within the last several years, there was, in addition, a new plan design option that was made available to employers, and that's called a carryover. What that means is that if you as the employer elect to put your plan design in this way, you can have employees be eligible to carry over up to $500 of any unused funds from one plan year to the next. That's a big thing because now employees can put up to $500 in an FSA essentially at no risk because it's eligible to carry over from year to year. There's also a secondary account underneath an FSA, and that's a dependent care FSA. So it works in the same manner as the healthcare FSA, and it's used for expenses for a dependent child that is 13 or younger that you would put into daycare or after-school care or any of those sorts of things in order for you to work on a daily basis. It allows you to funnel those dollars pre-tax. So why offer an FSA? Well, the employee advantage is going to be pretty much threefold. One is that it's going to increase their take-home pay by using pre-tax dollars for these healthcare and dependent care expenses. On average, that's going to represent about a 30% savings to the employee. So any of those employees with standing prescription costs or with an upcoming anticipated medical expense or kids that are going to need orthodontia, or even if you're planning on buying a new set of glasses and you want to get a designer pair of frames instead of the typical copay frames. All of those things could be put into the FSA and then used to purchase that amount. And not only are you going to save the taxes on that, which again on average is about 30%, but in addition to that, because of the uniform coverage rule, any amount that the employee elects, they have available to them on the first day of the plan year. So if they elect the maximum amount, which is $2,550 for 2016, then that employee could, on the first day of the plan year, swipe their debit card for that full $2,550, even though they may or may not have contributed any dollars into the plan at that point. So that's going to be the third advantage, and that's going to be, in effect, a no-interest loan because they would pay that back, of course, over their payrolls as they would take their standard deduction out, but they have those monies available to them from day one. So the tax benefit and the fronting of the monies are two big key advantages for employees. In turn, the employer does have some advantages as well. Most notably, it's going to be the reduced payroll taxes. So that matching 7.65% that you're having to pay for that employee, the FICA, any dollars that they elect to funnel through an FSA, you don't have to match those FICA taxes. So that can add up to a significant tax savings for the employer. Obviously, this in turn is going to create a more attractive employee benefits program for you as the employer. And then, of course, higher employee participation is going to lead to more savings. This is one of those programs that is very unique in the fact that when you traditionally offer a benefits program, there's going to be some cost to you as the employer. And although there are fees associated with outsourcing the administration, typically the tax advantages are going to far offset whatever fees. It's one of the few benefit programs that's actually a net positive proposition for the employer. So not only does it end up not costing them anything after tax advantages are considered, but ultimately it actually ends up putting more dollars in their pocket than the actual cost of the plan itself. Let's show you how that works. So from an employer savings example, this is assuming participation of maybe 20%, maybe 30%. That's the average participation in our experience. So if a group had just 25 people participating in an FSA with only an election of $1,500 instead of the full maximum of $2,550, and then you had 10 additional employees participating on the dependent care side, so a total of 35 participants, with a contribution of $87,500 adds up to an approximate savings of $6,700 for the employer. So as you can see, this more than makes up for the cost of the plan itself. And in fact, if you want to get creative, it's a way for you to add a benefit program and then find dollars to maybe address other areas of concern, such as compliance or any of the other ACA reporting or any of those other hot topics that employers are faced with nowadays. With respect to the carryover option, there are essentially 3 different ways that you as the employer have in designing the plan itself. The traditional methods are what's called a grace period as well as a run-out period. Let's describe those. The grace period is essentially an extension of the plan year. So if you chose a calendar year you run your plan typically, that would be January to December, and you added a grace period, then the employees would have all the way until March of the following year to not only submit claims, but also incur claims. So they could go to the doctor in February and make a claim against the previous plan year. A run-out period is very similar to the grace period with one big and key exception, is that the run-out period is that same extension of time, except for it only gives the employee the opportunity to find receipts that actually incurred during the previous plan year. So in February, they could go look for a receipt and make a claim that maybe they didn't submit, but they couldn't actually go see the doctor in February and expect to be reimbursed from that same plan year. Now the last option is the newest one, and that's the carryover that I mentioned previously. The carryover is the government's response to the whole use it or lose it, and what it is it allows an employee to roll over up to $500 of any unused health care funds into the next plan year. So as you can imagine, because of the less risk of forfeiture, a lot more employees are participating in FSAs as a result. And it doesn't limit you with respect to the next plan year. And what I mean by that is, let's say next year the annual limit is $2,550 again, and that individual employee is rolling over $500. They can still elect that full $2,550, in effect having a $3,000 amount to use for the following year. So there's no limitations on that carryover, and it doesn't impact maximums moving forward. So it's a really big benefit for employees. It increases participation, and I think it's a great option for new FSAs. Keep in mind there's one key caveat here, and that is if you choose the carryover option, you cannot choose the grace period. It's an either or. So you can't have like a 15-month plan year and then have a carryover after the fact. It's a carryover or grace period, not both. So that is the FSAs in general. We talked about the benefits to both the employer and the employee. So let's look at TASK's approach to FSA administration. So one of the key differentiators with TASK is our approach to funding the plan itself. What we do differently than any other third-party administrator is we do what's called withholding-based funding. So what that means is when we pull the monies that the employees contribute, we mirror it to your payroll and we pull exactly what you're pulling from them. Nothing more, nothing less. So how that is different from a typical third-party administrator is most third-party administrators are going to do what's called claims-based funding. That means that as your participants swipe the card, they pull funds from whatever account that you designate. The challenge with this for employers is it causes you to have to set aside whatever funds are needed to fund the plan, in essence. So you would either have to pre-fund it or have a separate bank account to the side that could potentially have 100% of the employee elections available at any given time. So how that's different from us is we're going to float those dollars on your behalf. So in the instance I gave you before where a participant goes and swipes their card for the full $2,550, TASK is going to pay that on the employer's behalf. So in effect, the employer is never out of pocket for the plan, And the other thing it does is for your finance department, it makes it really simple to reconcile because everything, your pro forma is going to be nice, even, and level and consistent throughout the year instead of changing on a monthly basis. Especially important for employers that may not have a significant amount of cash flows in order to support a plan such as this, excuse me. So eliminates one of those barriers to entry for some smaller employers. Of course, we have some service technology there. We have My Service Center, the Task Card, and My Cash, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. We also have a very pro-participant philosophy. If you've ever had an FSA card in the past, and if there was a request for substantiation from the previous vendor, and then if you failed to do so, one of the things that a third-party administrator typically does is they're going to turn off your card. That's going to result in some frustration for that participant and no doubt a phone call to the HR department to figure out what's going on. TASK takes the approach that we're not going to turn off that card. So make those calls to the HR department as well as have a better participant experience. We also combined our online platform because it's proprietary software. We combine the platform into one. So if you have multiple different service lines with us, it results in one task ID, one login, and one invoice. And of course, that audit guarantee that I mentioned before. So let's speak to those points a little bit more in detail. I mentioned the unique funding arrangement with a withholding-based funding. Again, that's reconciliation simplicity. It results in the employer never being out of pocket for the plan itself. In essence, what we're doing is we're floating those uniform covered dollars on behalf of the employer. We do also have a very robust web portal, so it allows you to manage participant information and history, their eligibility, so you can enroll participants, terminate participants, change employee elections throughout the year, and you can also submit requests. We want to make it as easy as possible so you're not having to call up to an 800 number with maybe a common request like an employee misplaced a debit card and you just need to order a replacement. That service request is going to be your ability to do so. And again, through My Service Center, it ensures that our solution to whatever issue you're having is very transparent. And I'll speak to how that works. So we also have very competitive pricing. It's very straightforward. We don't practice any of the hidden fees or additional charges. What you see is what you get when we do quote you. We do not do any mid-year increases. If there is any plan increase, it's done at the renewal, and it's typically as fair as we can make it. We typically base it off of the Consumer Price Index instead of just some arbitrary amount. That fee schedule, of course, is based on participation, and then, of course, we can add as many different account offerings as you choose at no additional cost. So you can have the healthcare account, you can have the dependent care account. If you have multi-site locations and you're in need of transit or parking accounts, we can do those within the FSA as well. Again, no additional cost to have one or all three. And if you're looking at other things such as compliance, COBRA, FMLA, we have the ability to bundle those service options as well, which would result in one low setup fee, one per employee per month fee with no sort of renewal fees moving forward. And then lastly, I think another thing that's unique to TASK is that we not only offer you the audit guarantee, but we want you to have a good experience. We want you to talk to fellow employers and tell them how our approach to administration is different and how happy you are with us. So in order to back that up, we also give you a money-back guarantee. So we'll let you on board, we'll let you start to experience the plan, and if it's not everything we claim it to be, well, not only will we cancel the plan, but we'll also provide you a money-back guarantee. There is another feature that if you're a Humana client, we have what's called Claim Connects technology. So how this works is 90% about of our transactions are going to be auto-adjudicated. What that means is if a participant goes and swipes their card at the doctor's office, there's a unique code. Actually, there's two codes. One code is assigned to the vendor itself to identify if it's a doctor's office, if it's a supermarket, if it's a Walgreens, like a pharmacy or what have you. And then there's a second code for the item itself. So like Coca-Cola is going to have a code as well as like a prescription. So the card itself typically is able to auto-adjudicate the claims. And what that means is when that participant swipes that card, if the code matches up to pharmacy, and then if the expense on the receipt matches up to a prescription code, that's the end of it. That's all the employee has to do. And for the most part, when they use the debit card, that is all they'll have to do. But in the event that either the machine is not coded properly or the expense is not something that is recognized, sometimes a request for receipt is necessary. We try to make this as easy as possible by giving you all the different mediums. You can use a mobile phone app, you can use fax, you can use our online platform to get that information to us. But Claim Connects is kind of a way to address that as well. And what that is that's where Humana actually sends us the explanation of benefits directly. So we circumvent the employee itself. And what this means is that there will be no time when you use your card that you would ever have to file a claim with us, because it's an automated process. Now, for those of you that do not have Humana, we do have the capability of setting this up with any carrier, and there is no charge for us to do it, but sometimes the carrier may keep that information close to chest, or they may charge you for it. You have to look into your certain circumstance itself. So here's how that concept works. I explained it in a little bit of detail, but let's work through it from start to finish, kind of a flow chart type deal. So this is the normal process. So the subscriber or benefit plan with the medical necessity goes in, and then they go to their doctor, dentist, or pharmacy. Then in turn, that doctor, dentist, or pharmacy files a claim, and it goes through typically a third-party administrator that is handling those claims. That claims administrator will in turn remit it to the medical carrier. Then the medical carrier compares it to the plans and determines what the patient responsibility is. And then they print and distribute an explanation of benefit, explaining that to the employee and mail it out, of course. And then that patient or task participant in turn should submit that claim to us with that explanation of benefits, right? So what claims, and then afterwards, of course, task verifies that that coverage and payment distribution is available to them. So what Claims Connects does is it comes in and comes kind of in the middle of that process itself. So what happens is Claim Connects eliminates that middle portion. And there you have it. So the covered expense and patient responsibility then comes through the Claim Connects, and then task verifies the coverage and payment distribution, so it eliminates the employee step in that process. Really cool feature. I mentioned previously about service transparency. What this is and how we accomplish it is through a section of the online platform called My Service Center. And you can see a little screenshot of that on the lower right-hand side. It's going to give you reports, it's going to give you requests, it's going to give you activity. What you're noticing on the top right-hand side here is actually calls and call wait times. So for any given month, you can see how many people called into us, what their average wait time on hold was, whether they were routed to a live person or went through our IVR system. So it's very transparent, like during times of high call volumes and stuff like that, if we're experiencing delayed wait times, you're going to see that, right? And then also for any sort of service request. So anytime a participant calls up, let's say they have a claims issue, we denied a request for whatever reason, you can see that as well. So on the bottom side, you can see any sort of service request, how many were submitted in any given month. And on the top left-hand side, you can actually look at those requests. So you can pull up, open that request, and see the assigned work order number. You can see when it was opened, when it was closed, and then any associated notes with it as well. So real-time service metrics, transparency in service. If we're doing good, you're going to see that as well. If we're doing bad, you're going to see that. So I think that holds us very highly accountable, and it gives a lot of that information right at your fingertips. We've all had the experience of where, if you had to call into a customer service department and let's say you get disconnected and you've got to call up and you've got to explain that same situation to an entirely different person. What My Service Center does is by giving you that work order and allowing you to accomplish these things through the online platform, it eliminates that. Or if you do need to call the 800 number, now you have a specific work order to reference. you can take that individual on the other line exactly to where you need to take them, and they can get caught up immediately and see any activity on our end with what has been done thus far to kind of resolve whatever issue it was. With respect to employee education and enrollment, we're going to give you all sorts of materials. We're going to give you the education materials. We're going to give you enrollment forms. We have the capability, because we have regional offices and I am based local, we can do your enrollment meetings if you so choose. If you have multi-site locations and you want to conduct an online enrollment, you have those capabilities as well. There are also employer webinars available. I would highly encourage whoever is administering the plan to take part in that webinar so that one of our onboarding specialists can walk you through exactly what our administrative processes are and how it works moving forward. There's also on-demand training presentations for both employers and employees. So if you have a company intranet and you want to throw that up on there to kind of educate those employees that are enrolling mid-year. And then, of course, we distribute client administrative manuals for the plans themselves. These are essentially the instruction manuals, A to Z guides on everything regarding our FSA, or for that matter, any other service that we would administer. So in review, some of those advantages for the participants themselves, again, that benefits debit card, that is an integral part of the entire process. Again, we can auto-adjudicate about 90% of those claims that are done through the debit card. We also have the capability of utilizing mobile apps and texting. I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. Fast reimbursements. We actually have the fastest turnaround time for reimbursements in those instances the debit card is not used. Tried to simplify claim processing as much as possible by capturing co-pays, prescription costs, and so forth. Multiple self-service tools. So I mentioned the My Service Center. I mentioned the online platform that is available from both the participant and the employer perspective. We can do online enrollment. That's managed however you see fit. You can distribute a spreadsheet to us. You can actually handle the enrollment yourself through our online platform. You can send us paper enrollments to do it ourselves. Or if you have a technology-savvy group, you can actually instruct the employees to enroll themselves. It's really however you choose. And for our FSAs, as well as every other, we have dedicated customer support to those specific areas of administration. So let's talk about the participant experience, what they're going to experience if they decide to move forward. So the ideal situation, of course, is automatic claim submittal with Claims Connects. We're trying to move to that direction with all carriers. Those negotiations are ongoing. Currently, it's in place with Humana, but again, the ultimate experience for them is that there's less wait time and labor for the participant. There's no need to do those receipt reimbursements or receipt requests after the fact. We do daily claims processing, so we have eyes on those claims if they're manually submitted every single day, so it allows us to have very quick turnaround times for those claims that are not submitted with a debit card. I did mention through our exclusive Veriflex technology, we are able to adjudicate about 90% of claims themselves. A little bit older slide saying 80%, but we're all the way up to 90% now. And then, of course, the reimbursements themselves, either via MyCash or via Bank ACH. The quicker way is going to be MyCash. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. So the tools and resources, again, that debit card is convenient access to any available funds. So in the past, you know, if you went to an FSA eligible experience, you would in turn submit the receipt and then be reimbursed. Now with the introduction of the debit cards, it eliminates that step in the process, and the employee, for the most part, is not out of pocket. There's also MyCash with our reimbursement structure is available for non-benefit purchases. So I'll talk about how that works in just a little bit. Mobile app and texting, so they have real-time account access. They can request reimbursements. They can see exactly where they are with respect to how much money is in the plan itself. Again, the easy online enrollment and account management, dedicated customer support, and really you have access to us in any way that you see fit. We have the app, we have web, we have phone, we have mail, we have fax, So whatever that particular individual is most comfortable with, we could definitely accommodate them. So the card itself is good for 4 years. It's automatically reissued. So if you do put the plan into place, there's no need for them to get a new card every single year. There is an additional card available for dependents or spouses. And again, it can be used for any of the different accounts. So if they have a healthcare, dependent care, and transportation account, the card, again, is smart enough to recognize which account to take from in which circumstance. And it's relying on that merchant IIAS system to determine that. And again, I can't stress this enough, one of the big advantages is that TASK takes the approach of not shutting off that card, again, to eliminate the noise that HR departments sometimes experience. So let's talk about MyCash and how it came to be. So for the most part, as I mentioned, a participant is going to be using that debit card, right? But what happens, let's say, if someone goes to the pharmacy and they forgot their debit card at home, or if they use a dependent care provider that may not accept credit cards? How do they gain access to those funds? So what would happen is they would typically pay out of pocket, and then they would submit for reimbursement from TASK for those monies. The easiest way to do so is through that app where they could be at the point of sale, pay for it in cash, get the receipt, take a picture of the receipt, and then we reimburse them. Our preferred method to reimburse them is going to be into what's called a MyCash account. And what that is for all intents and purposes, it's a fourth bucket underneath their debit card. Except at this point, because it's already substantiated funds, it's treated just like a cash card. So once we reimburse them, they could use it anywhere a MasterCard is accepted. This enables them to do some pretty cool things. One is, they can go to an ATM and withdraw it. They can go make a purchase anywhere a MasterCard is accepted for a non-FSA expense, again, because it's already been validated and it's returned to them. Or the biggest thing is that they can make combination purchases. So if they go to a Walgreens and they want to purchase a Coca-Cola and a prescription, the card is smart enough to take the monies from the unreimbursed medical account for the prescription, and then if they have any MyCash funds, to take the MyCash funds for the Coca-Cola. So it doesn't trouble them to have 2 forms of payment or so forth. Pretty cool feature. The logic behind it is that it enables us to get the money back to that participant faster. If we did it via the traditional method, like every other third-party administrator does, it's called direct deposit. Now, if anybody who's ever looked at their banking statement, when you initially deposit funds into your account, you'll see a little code on the right-hand side. It's ACH, and what that is automated clearinghouse. So it's a specific and purposeful time delay between banks as they verify funds. And so anytime this happens, even though we may direct deposit those monies the very same day, typically it takes about 48 to 72 hours for the bank to release those funds. By using MyCash, it's a way to eliminate that wait time. We live in a fast food world that participants do not like to be out of pocket for monies that they've already contributed to. So MyCash was kind of our solution to this and enabled us to get the money back to the participant faster. And then, of course, we got those extra pluses on the back end with the ability to make combination purchases and so forth. And they can still gain access to their monies just like they would via direct deposit through an ATM or transfer those funds into their traditional bank account if they so choose. Again, they can also set up the account. Let's say you feel that your group this may be too sophisticated for them or it may confuse them. You could set up the account to be all direct deposit if you so choose. So the mobile tools themselves, this is that mobile app itself. It's available from the Apple App Store. It's available from Google Play and even Amazon. What you see on the right-hand side is going to be some of our home screens. The first one is going to be, of course, the username and password when you initially log on. The right-hand side to that is going to be actually submitting the reimbursement. So how that works is you would just put in the date of service, the benefit type, the amount that you're requesting, again, describe that service provider to us, and then take a picture of that receipt. It really is that simple. It allows you to, check for real-time account balances. You can request reimbursement and, of course, submit that substantiation all through the mobile app itself. So you have the online platform, you have the smartphone, many different ways to access those tools and those funds itself. For those participants that maybe have an older mobile phone, we didn't forget about them either. We also have a way to communicate a lot of the same information via text message or SMS. So they can, submit a request for reimbursement, obtain an account balance. On the lower right-hand side, you're going to see instructions on how to go about doing that. They could text task balance to that specific number, and it'll text them back their balance. And of course, they can do the same thing for a reimbursement as well. This is the online web portal participant point of view. I'm really proud of this. We actually revamped this within the past several years, as I mentioned. Anything you would expect this portal to do, it's capable of. They can do online enrollment, visible account transactions, request reimbursements, upload the receipts, keeps any sort of documents in a library for them. So anything we've ever mailed out to them, anything with any importance, PDF or what have you. And then, of course, the participant themselves can submit service requests as well. I don't know if you can see this. It's a little bit small, but on the left-hand side, it's going to list all the benefits that they have from all the respective accounts: medical, dependent care, transportation, parking, my cash account, and the respective balances in each of those. And then on the right-hand side, a simplified just service request sort of item like, I want to do X. I want to view my account overview. I want to request a reimbursement. I want to see what my activity looks like. Any of those things, very front-facing, very simple to access. Again, brand new portal, I think is an industry-leading approach right now. Okay, so how does the management and customer service look like from the employer perspective? What's our approach moving forward? We're going to talk a little bit about our phones, our IVR system, emails. We do conduct onboarding and outbound call teams. I do highly encourage employers that do elect a flexible spending account to take part in that onboarding call. It's very important that who's ever going to be administering this internally with the employer is very comfortable and familiar with our processes, our approach, how to do most of those common things. We do try to do a functional alignment of resources. So as certain times in the plan year get busier, we do shift resources to those specific departments that are impacted. And of course, we have a night shift so that we can accommodate all different time zones. So how it would look like if you decided to move forward is you would complete a plan application and service agreement. We would discuss the specific timelines when you wanted the plan to run. Typically, it's going to concur with your benefit plan year. In some instances, either due to dissatisfaction or you're just coming to know about an FSA, you can set up a mid-year plan. We would review, of course, the onboarding process, how you would go about employee communication. We have all those different tools. You can do it in person, again, the web, and of course we give you the materials so that you can communicate all the different details and educate the employees of the plan itself. Our customer care channels, we have dedicated customer care channels for both the employer and participant. A little bit of detail there. Each individual is assigned a task ID. It's a 12-digit number, and that's the participants, you as the employer, as well as your financial advisor. And when you type in that number into our phone system when you first call in, it's going to automatically recognize you for whatever type of customer you are. So if that participant calls in and enters their 12-digit task ID, the 12-digit task ID is going to recognize them as an FSA participant, and it's going to route them to the appropriate department so that person, is trained to address their concerns and practice that first call resolution. And then again, the employer has another level as well as the financial advisor. trained in different areas, because obviously the employer's concerns are going to be slightly different from the participant. They may be requesting a billing issue, a heightened service request, or something like that. So that's why those customer care channels are dedicated to those specific types of participants, employers, or what have you. Our availability for the customer care is at least 8 to 5, depending upon the time zone. Again, we do coach them on a quarterly basis. We take very big pride in our call handling metrics and standards. That's why we do put that out there on our My Service Center to ensure that people aren't experiencing long hold times or are getting first call resolution. We do have multiple different languages, of course, Spanish-speaking CSRs, 60 plus that are dedicated specifically to the FSA department itself. Speaking to the state-of-the-art phone system, one of the things it does is that if all of these 60 reps are on the line, what it does is it starts to ring what's called overflow. So other departments start to pick up calls to address FSA questions or so forth, again, in an effort to drive down those hold times and to improve client experience. And then lastly, if we do ever enter the point of there is a service issue that we need to put eyes on, it's something that was serious enough that a corrective action needs to take place, we have a specific process where a team gets involved. A CAR is created. That team is responsible for discovering the root cause, why it happened, of course, and then implementing a new process or corrective action to get it resolved. And then finally, a preventative action to ensure it doesn't happen again, either for you as the employer or for any of our other shared clients. So we take these things very seriously. That quality improvement system, again, is based in those Lean and Six Sigma principles. Hopefully we never get there with the client itself, but if it does occur, know that it's serious enough to where we take a corrective action request approach to it. So that is our service in a nutshell. That's FSAs in a nutshell. I know that was a lot of information to absorb. In review, there's big tax advantages available to the employer as well as the employee. I think that most groups could benefit from an FSA, and again, find dollars to use for other areas of concern, especially compliance with the environment we're in now. With that said, we'll open the floor to any questions.
Hey, Elliot. So we did have a couple questions come in. The first one, what happens when employees leave the organization and have not fully funded the FSA, but they have used all the funds?
So what happens there is called a forfeiture. So the employer would be responsible for those funds. Now that is a common concern, especially for an employer that has not implemented an FSA before. However, the statistics do not support that concern. Let's talk about that a little bit more detail. So for those of you that are familiar with the use it or lose it rule, that essentially states that any dollars that are not used by an employee are forfeited at the end of that plan year. What may or may not be commonly known is that those forfeitures are actually given back to the employer. So those monies are intended to be used to help offset those early terminations that may occur. The second thing I would have the employer consider as well is the tax advantages. We mentioned with just 30 participants, you're going to be saving in excess of $6,000 in taxes. So when you consider tax advantages as well as the forfeitures, it's very, very hard for an employer to come out negative with respect to an FSA. Our statistics, personal statistics, are the average refund to the employer with forfeitures for a 100-life case is about $6,000. So not only are they going to have those tax savings, but typically there's leftover monies in employee accounts that total around $6,000 that we give back to the employer. Now, in the instances that the employer does lose money, that happens with our personal clients about 10% of the time, and the average loss is $800. So you can see that, $800 loss for those early terminations compared to $6,000 in tax advantages, and then the other years where you may or may not get forfeitures. I get it that it's a concern, but again, for the most part, it's not realized.
Okay, great. And can employees participate in FSA if they don't elect our medical plan?
Yes, they can. They do. There is no, unlike like a health savings account or an HRA, typically they're going to be tied to the health plan itself. And FSA does not need to be tied to the health plan itself. So they can participate, let's say they're on their husband's plan at another employer or vice versa. They can definitely participate in that FSA to gain the advantages. And again, that FSA, even though that employee is the one making those claim for those dollars, they can be used for any immediate family member. So let's say only one person in the family works for you, they take out the FSA. Those FSA dollars can be used for the husband, the spouse, the children. There's lots of different ways that they can make use of those funds.
Okay, excellent. And how would someone go about getting a quote?
So for a quote, we would just simply need the total number of employees, the name of the employer, and then your intended start date, so when you would like to start the plan itself. And you can email that request directly to Facing Group, and they'll get with me directly to give you a quote.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Elliot. I just wanted to remind everybody that you will be receiving a follow-up email from Phase-In Group. We're going to provide you with some of the information you've seen today. And thank you once again for attending, and thank you, Elliot, for doing such a great job presenting. Have a great day, everybody.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.